39 peace-loving nations will meet in San Francisco beginning April 25th to prepare a security charter based on the Dumbarton Oaks proposals and the Yalta supplement. San Francisco's famous hotels, now overflowing with a wartime population, face a major housing problem with 3,000 visitors trying to occupy 2,300 rooms.
My parents had been at the founding conference of the United Nations. And the reason they were there is that my father participated in the landing at Guadalcanal. He was a Marine, and he helped to create the American Veterans Committee and the notion of a United Nations Servicemen's League, so that never again would young men, at the time it was all men, except for those great waves, young men would face a war like World War II. So they both attended the founding conference, and that had a profound influence on me. As much as my father felt committed to fighting a war, he felt equally, if not more, committed to ensuring that there were no more wars. That sense of activism, that sense of giving back to the world, and the sense that it takes everybody to get something done really is at the heart of the multilateralism of the United Nations, an institution we would have to create if it didn't exist.
The Charter of the United Nations, which you are now signing, is a solid structure upon which we can build for a better world. History will honor you for it.
Before I came into national security and foreign policy, I did child welfare. I ran political campaigns. I am the first woman to be Undersecretary for Political Affairs, which is sort of outrageous that it took till 2015 to make that happen. I'm very proud to have done that. So breaking barriers, taking risks, making sure that we don't go backwards, I think that's what my parents were about at the founding of the UN. My dad took me to the Washington Sheraton, and I don't remember exactly what year, the late 50s, to hear Eleanor Roosevelt speak. There was almost like a halo around her, so my memory is of her on stage and just feeling this incredible sense that here was an important person. So her example certainly had an effect on me, and as a teenager I read every biography there was on Eleanor Roosevelt, and I think for women of my generation she was a role model because we didn't have as many.
The real change which must give to people throughout the world their human rights must come about in the hearts of people. We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms which give them dignity and which will give...
Eleanor Roosevelt, of course, is really the champion of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which all of us as diplomats use all of the time around the world. I say to people here in the State Department, in this world of 2015, there is no issue that is not multilateral. No issue. We need that forum. We need that place to talk. We need that place to really talk about our values and why we think democracy is so important, why we think human rights is so important.
Because we hold our leaders accountable and insist on a free press, an independent judiciary. because we address our differences in the open space of democracy, with respect for the rule of law, with a place for people of every race and every religion, and with an unyielding belief in the ability of individual men and women to change their communities and their circumstances and their countries for the better.
And it's true for business as well. Business has to work multilaterally. So really, I think human interaction in this day and age is interrelated. Social media connects us in ways that we are not connected. Most people think of the United Nations as the Security Council, where in fact 15 member states with 5 permanent members sit around and make important decisions. But the United Nations is a set of institutions that really touch everybody's everyday life. It does need reform. It does have flaws. The world today is not the world of 1945. There are management reforms and practice reforms and financial reforms that are necessary. So it has a ways to go yet to keep reinventing itself. But the basic fundamental concept that we have to have a forum in which we can talk and create capabilities that serve the whole world and people in their day-to-day lives, that still is real today as it was at the founding of the UN. We've had to learn how to work and play well with others in a way that maintains our own sovereignty, which every country wants. That's important to every country, not just the United States, while at the same time making sure we can pool resources and ask others to share the burden. The world is changing, and we are all profoundly interconnected in that change. Nothing is more emblematic of that than the issue of climate change. This has a profound impact on our economic growth, on whether there will be jobs for Americans into the future, whether in fact there will be coastlines that will be submerged under the sea, whether we will have the biodiversity we need to feed people, whether we will have the food security we need. And when there is not food security, there is more conflict and a greater chance of war. So all of these pieces come together in the landscape of what we have to do as diplomats, and quite frankly, what every American should be caring and thinking about. When I was the Assistant Secretary for Legislative Affairs, was the time of the Beijing Women's Conference. Because the Congress was going through a big transition then, there had been a change in the majority in the House, I wasn't able to go to the Beijing Women's Conference, but I remember it with great vividness of how profound it was. First Lady, then Hillary Rodham Clinton, went, made a speech that really set the world on fire.
And women who run their own businesses. It is conferences like this that compel governments and peoples everywhere to listen, look, and face the world's most pressing problems. Wasn't it, after all, after the Women's Conference in Nairobi 10 years ago, that the world focused for the first time on the crisis of domestic violence? Earlier,
and here we are 20 years later. It used to be that I would go to meetings around the world, I'd be the only woman in the room. And that's still the case some places, but usually now when I walk into the room, the counterpart across me, more often male than not, makes a point of telling me that they have women doing this, they have women doing that. And I sort of like that. I make it a point to meet with women everywhere I go to say this is important, that if you don't use 50% of the resources you have, you aren't making the best use of your human capital. Let us forge a new future. Let us play our role in doing that. We won't be able to do everything. We'll just do our one thing and maybe make a small contribution to that happening. And I think that's what I hear in my head, whether it is sitting across the table from the Iranians, which I do on a very regular basis, or that's being with Secretary Kerry when he was negotiating with Minister Lavrov on the Syria CW agreement. One day I was fortunate to be with the president, and I said, I'm not sure I'm optimistic. And he said, oh, it's not really about optimism, it's about hope. I think the message that my parents really gave to their children was that you have to give back, you have to engage in the world. You have a privileged life, and so that gives you a responsibility to act. Sometimes you act at expense to yourself, to your family, but it's worth it because of the lessons that you learn, because of the contribution you can make. And I'm very fortunate. So I see a lot of idealism. My own daughter is an activist around immigration and asylum. I see it in the young people with whom I work. I see it in the kids who do the Model UN, even today. I think idealism does not mean that you aren't clear-eyed, that you aren't realistic, that there aren't some days that you aren't cynical, that there aren't some days you aren't jaded. We all are. But what it does mean is that you haven't given up hope. You're going to keep trying. You'll do your best. We can't be all things all at once. As a mother and now a grandmother, as a wife, as a friend, I certainly know I can't be all things to all people all at the same time. But over time, I hope I give it my best.